Well, Paul, I didn't think we'd speak again so soon, but in the interim, a few hours ago, since our first conversation, I found some public postings from Gina Clayton Tarvin, who's now school board president, who was then trustee during the asbestos scandal of 2014. And a parent recently asked her online about your status, what happened to you, and I've shared with you what she posted publicly. Part of her words here include, Mr. Mobley appears to have allowed the entire roof removal without a notice of nonconformance or any attempts to stop the work. You know, I'm going to post her full responses here on my blog, but based on what you read, do you feel what she's saying is accurate? Is she describing the situation properly? What's your reaction to what she said?
I believe she has been misinformed about what a DSA project inspector job duties are. There's no way a project inspector can stop working any project. Only the district or the field engineer for DSA or a supervisor from DSA can stop work, or an architect, but once again, they would notify the district. Project engineer can't stop anybody from doing anything. All they can do is observe and report.
Well, which totally flies in the face of what she is saying here. She's basically putting it all on you, having had the power to stop it as it was happening. But you're saying that's not accurate?
Well, believe me, if I had the power, I would have done that. But where do I get that power at, Chris? That's nowhere in the handbook for DSA project inspector, in the code, or even in job specs that I've seen.
She has there's another quote here from her.
Especially when you haven't spoke to anybody from the district saying, yeah, if there's any problem, just go ahead and stop work, because the contractors will certainly like that.
Right. Well, here's another part of her response. Quote, thus, despite having the opportunity to stop construction and the removal of asbestos, it appears Mr. Moberly failed to do so. When there was an asbestos violation on Saturday, August 23rd, a day when SQAMD was not in operation, rather than notify the contractor to stop the improper asbestos removal, Mr. Moberly appears to have allowed the entire roof removal without a notice of nonconformance or any attempt to stop the work. So again, you're saying none of that would fall under your jurisdiction?
No, that has nothing to do with DSA. Asbestos removal is another project, another authority that would be hired by the district, and they would hire a lab that does asbestos inspection, and they would hire some inspector to come out and observe the removal of that, and they would also test the air to make sure that there's no particles in the air, or that they were doing the removal as they're supposed to, where they remove one tile at a time, water it down, and put it in a trash bag, tape it up, and then throw it in the dumpster.
Well, what does it make you think when you see answers like this from her? How does it make you feel? What do you think's going on? I mean, it almost feels to me like a scapegoat situation's taking place here, and you're being kind of tossed under the bus. Is that your impression too?
Well, that's exactly my impression, Chris. Especially when she never CC'd me on that email or anybody else that I know, so that I could have a chance to, refute whatever it was. That email also sounds a lot like a district lawyer I talked to, who was supposed to be a DSA expert.
This is the lawyer whose last name is Tao?
That guy, yes, Tao. Once again, is misinformed, who thinks that, I guess, the DSA project inspector is God, he can do anything that he wants to do on the job site, and everybody has to listen to him, which is not the case. Everything I do, Chris, I did by the book, per the code, per the DSA procedures. I can't write a nonconformance on asbestos removal if there's nothing for me to base my nonconformance on. There has to be something in the code,
right,
in the plans, project, or specifications. What happened was that the project management company never had that figured into their budget, I believe, when they took this job on. And it was discovered after the job ramped up at the second construction meeting, where the contractors and subcontractors come back and telling, because there weren't really any they're subcontractors, but basically I think they were prime contractors for the plumbing, the construction, destruction, for the roofing. That's another prime contractor, and those guys would hire subcontractors. What they discovered was that electrician or plumber was doing some investigation on one job, and they noticed that there was a sign on the wall that said, "Do not disturb this wall material contains asbestos."
Right.
And then they came back and they told the architect and the project management company that, hey, we have to get into these areas and we're not going to drill any holes in it because it has asbestos in it. And then it seemed to be like, it looked like somebody dropped the ball. I don't know who it was, but at the next meeting, there was another person from the project management company. I believe it was the supervisor for Wayne, I think that's his name, who was the project manager for all 11 of those projects for Ocean View. And he more or less told him to go ahead, and though they'll remove the asbestos, they hired somebody, a different lab, and they had inspectors to observe the removal in the classroom, but they didn't have anything for the roofing inspection. And I don't know about any of the other schools where they re-roofed and tore off, but I know that on Mesa View of Building D, as I told before, they were removing the roof there, and when it came down to removing the asbestos, they didn't have any permit from SQAMD to remove asbestos. But the guy did give me from B&A with something from some other project, I believe, that wasn't dated for that day. It had nothing to do with it. I spoke also with the contractor, prime contractor, Chapman Roofing, and told them that they had safety violations and that they were not removing the asbestos like they should be. How come there's no inspector on here? And I also told that to Wayne, to the project management company. So I did everything I could to sound the alarm. The other people either ignored it or they wanted to place it on me, because what am I supposed to do? How do I report that to DSA or to anybody else? Because that's not in their authority to have anything to do with that.
Well, she also says
that's on the districts. The district didn't do anything about it.
Right.
Like I said before, and the other thing that they knew, someone told me that they knew, the district knew from 1986 that roofing tile had asbestos in it. So they should have had enough plan to figure out how to have that done and removed. And I don't hire labs. I don't hire inspectors. What I do is I will schedule special inspections for either concrete, pre-stressed concrete, welding, high-strength bolting, or fireproofing of steel. That's all my authority covers. And I will observe and make sure that those inspectors do their job correctly. But nowhere in DSA is there anything for asbestos inspection. That has to be with the district, the architect, or the project management company.
Well, she's clearly
definitely
misrepresented. She clearly misrepresented your responsibilities. Now, it wasn't an email; it was a public Facebook post. But I agree with you. Before she posted that, it would have it seemed proper to at least reach out and sort of get your side of it. She has another piece here, though, Paul. I'm curious about in signing off her response. It says the district did receive a threatening email indicating that Mr. Moberly planned on notifying the press of asbestos oversight issues that appear to have occurred and were resolved over a month prior to Mr. Moberly being removed from the projects. These happened closer to when you left, didn't they? I mean, as you've described,
I would assume that what happened was that the district probably got the information from the SQMAD about that time, and that somebody from the district, probably the facilities guy, called up Sandy Prinkle and voiced his displeasure with that.
Right, but what she says here, when you were going to notify the press, there were oversight issues that concerned you. We talked about them earlier in part one.
The thing is about notifying the press, Chris, is first of all that the contractors or the district, they don't care about inspection. They only care about getting money from the state for having kids in the classroom. So what resolve or what other avenue could I take if I don't have any backup from the district, don't have any backup from Sandy Pringle, and don't have any backup from the DSA? All I have left to do is go public.
Right.
I was kind of upset about that, and then I think, you know what? The way I do my job is very stressful as it is, because, it seems like nobody can do their job correctly. It's like one of those cartoons you see, like how many things are different in this picture versus the other picture. If you can't do that cartoon every day in the newspaper, you should not be a contractor, because you have to look at every little small detail in order to do the job correctly. If you can't do the small details, you can't do the big details. I may be anal retentive, and I may spend a lot of time reading stuff and investigating stuff, and then thoroughly aware of what's going on and how things should be done per the industry standard, or how whatever product you use to manufacture this product, how that's supposed to be applied in order to have a guarantee for the school district. If people can't read that information, and I can, then I call them on it. I believe what they don't like is that somebody who is inspecting them like I inspect them, which, as I've been told by other people, like they like me because I inspect like an inspector should be inspecting. There's nothing too little or nothing too great that you can't look at.
Of course.
And there's a reason for that. Either it's going to cost you time and money later on, that be in the district's time, or there's going to be a catastrophic failure when there's an earthquake, high winds, a fire, or whatever, and it's all about safety.
Paul, you also mentioned that the language that you read in these responses from Gina Clayton-Tarvin seemed like the same language the lawyer had written you. I mean, looking at them again, does it seem like the same information is just being sort of passed around?
It almost seems verbatim, I mean, there are some things that aren't quite the same. I don't have that email in front of me, but I remember speaking with that guy, and he sent me a lawyer out basically saying it's all my fault. And obviously they probably thought that they scared me to go away, but actually they didn't scare me to go away, because here I am talking to you about it. And I don't really appreciate them saying that that's my fault, especially when they're talking through the seat of their pants, because they have no real knowledge about how DSA and inspection goes. Because you know what? I've been a DSA inspector on school projects since 1995. Mm-hmm. And I do this every day the same way, and someone's always looking to, doesn't like the way I do something, because I'm always looking at them and seeing how they're not doing stuff correctly, especially when it comes to welding or structural.
It's the nature of the job. You're looking for things that are anomalies to correct them.
And, the thing is, I'm not supposed to know the code. I'm just supposed to ensure that the contractor knows it and does the code. However, no contractor has any code books on site. If you ask them about something, they always say they don't know. They just go by what, we did that in the last job, and the inspector said they didn't care about it. The thing is, maybe the last job, that inspector did say that, but we're not doing the last job. We're doing this job. And I was assigned by DSA, and I have to sign an affidavit at the end of the project saying that I swear that everything's done correctly per the code, per the plans, per the specifications. In order for me to sign that, I want to make sure that it is like that. And also the contract has the same thing, the architect and the engineer.
Right. Well, Paul, thanks for clarifying that. I mean, again, I think it's obviously wrong for somebody to misrepresent something the way it appears happened to you. And it's good to hear.
Let me tell you also this, Chris, that this happened on a Saturday, and if I never, because usually they don't want to pay inspectors to work overtime. Mm-hmm. They just want to pay, because that basically comes from Sandy Pringle, those guys, because they're basically like pimps. They get a percentage of every hour you work. They get $5 to $10 or $15 an hour off of your pay. Mm-hmm. So it could be the $10 to $20 to $30,000 they're making off of each inspector every year if they work a full 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. So they don't want you to work on Saturday. However, for some reason I was there, and I believe that the contractor and the project manager knew that I wasn't going to be there, but I was. And what if I wouldn't have been there? No one would know anything about this, right? It could maybe 40 years down the road somebody does get asbestos in their lungs and it affects them. How do they know what happened? So now there's a sort of Damocles hanging over everybody because of this, because somebody didn't want to do the job correctly. And for some reason, they think it's my fault. I didn't write the code. I didn't write the plans or specs. I didn't do the work. I wasn't the project management, and I wasn't the district. They have a fiduciary responsibility to take care of all those students and even people in the neighborhood surrounding that schools to make sure that everything is safe. It's not my responsibility to call OSHA either. If I see a safety violation, I'll bring it to somebody's attention. What they do with it is on their own. All I can do is bring it to their attention. And if it wasn't for that concerned citizen calling up SQMAD, nobody know about any of this stuff. However, there's another school that Sandy Pringle also had an inspector on. That inspector during the asbestos removal wasn't even on site. So if they think that the DSA inspector is supposed to be observing asbestos removal, that guy was on a cruise ship in Mexico when that was going on over at Oakville. So I believe he's probably being dissed too by Miss Tarvin Clayton. Mm-hmm. I know nothing about that though.
Wow.
However, I know that I do my job the same every day, the way I've done it since day one. And I armed myself with the proper knowledge in order to protect myself so that I couldn't make any wrong calls that would affect the contractor or myself. Because you know what? Everybody's always trying to throw darts at the inspector.
Sure. Well, Again, Paul, thanks for clarifying and for answering her comments point by point. It's good to have the other side of the coin because, quite frankly, sadly, this happens more and more. It seems these gross misrepresentations and these the scapegoating of people that that don't fall in line or don't go along with the
Well,
program. So
well,
thanks for
Chris, even
speaking out.
on even bigger projects with bigger contractors that say they're the industry standard for doing concrete or something else, they will do the same thing. They will get in somebody's ear in the district
Hmm.
to where they think that guy is in their pocket one way or the other. And if the inspector does do his job and it's going to affect their schedule or something else, they'll tell the district that guy's holding them up and getting rid of them. But every inspector is just like a cop or anybody else. They don't really want to have to go out there and write a ticket or put a cuff on anybody, but they want to earn their money honestly and feel like they earned their money,
Sure.
not just sleeping on the job like some people do. Because if you sleep on the job, everybody likes you.
All right, Paul. Thank you very much, man. We'll stay in touch through this, and if as
I
details
guess you're
evolve, I
getting.
may get you back on the line here.
That's fine, Chris.
I mean, thanks for being available.